The smell is what I remember first. Not blood, not medicine, something older, like wet concrete and marigolds left too long in a bucket. That smell lived in Ward 7B, the way damp lives in old walls. You stopped noticing it after a week. I stopped noticing it after 3 years. My name is Rajan Verma. I was a ward attendant at AIIMS, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, for 11 years. Night shift, mostly. The 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. stretch that nobody else wanted. I didn't mind. The ward was quieter at night. Fewer families, fewer questions. Less of the desperate energy that follows people through those corridors in daylight hours. That pull of hope and grief they drag behind them like something attached to their ankles. I had a small room in Munirka, a 20-minute auto ride from the hospital. My wife, Seema, would leave roti and dal covered on the stove before she slept. I would come home at 6:15, eat alone at the kitchen table with the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, then sleep until 2 in the afternoon. That was my life, and that was fine. It started on a Tuesday in November. I remember because the fog had just begun settling over Delhi, the kind that turns streetlights into soft orange bruises in the dark. I was doing my rounds, checking IV lines, noting the fluid levels, making sure the patients in the post-surgical ward were breathing evenly. Beds 1 through 14 all accounted for. Bed 15 was supposed to be empty. There was a man sitting up in it. Not lying, sitting, his back straight, hands folded in his lap, like he was waiting for a bus. He was wearing a grey kurta, the kind old men wear in winter, full-sleeved, slightly wrinkled at the elbows. His hair was combed back neatly. He looked about 60, maybe 65. He looked completely ordinary. I assumed admission had brought someone in without logging it properly. It happened sometimes. The paperwork would catch up by morning. So, I walked over with my register. "Namaste ji," I said. "Aapka naam?" He turned to look at me. His eyes were clear, not confused, not medicated. He just looked at me the way a person looks at someone they have been waiting on for a while. "Sharma," he said. "D.K. Sharma." I wrote it down. I asked him what he was admitted for, when he had come in, which doctor he was under. He answered each question in a slow, measured voice. I wrote it down. I asked him what he was admitted for, when he had come in, which doctor he was under. "This evening, Dr. Manotra." I told him I would check on the paperwork, that someone would bring him water, that he should press the call button if anything felt wrong. He nodded and looked back at the wall. I went to the nursing station. Sister Kavita was on duty. She had been at AIIMS longer than me, grey at her temples, quick with a pen. I asked her about the man in the bed 15. She didn't look up from the prescription log. "15 is empty, Rajan bhai. Has been since yesterday's discharge. There's a man sitting there right now." She looked up then, not alarmed, more tired. If someone from casualty wandered in, you need to take them back. But sometimes it doesn't look like he wandered anywhere. He's sitting up, clean clothes, says he's under Dr. Manotra. She frowned, pulled the overnight log, ran her finger down the column. Nothing. She called over the junior nurse on duty. They both walked towards the ward with me. Bed 15 was empty. The pillow had a slight depression in it, the faint impression of where a head might have rested, or where one had been placed for cleaning. Sister Kavita gave me a look I had never seen on her face before. Not quite pity, something more careful than that. Get some chai, she said quietly. Long shift tonight. I didn't get chai. I stood at the end of the corridor with my register open to the page where I had written D.K. Sharma, and I looked at my own handwriting, and I felt something I don't quite have the right word for. Not fear, more like the feeling of reaching into your pocket and finding it empty, and you were sure you had put something there. I told myself I'd imagined it. The night shift does things to you. Everyone who works there knows this. Sounds that aren't there, moment in peripheral vision. Half dreams that sneak in at the edge of long stretches of quiet. I had heard other attendants talk about it. I had dismissed them, mostly. I was not by nature someone who is frightened easily, but D.K. Sharma's name sat on my register page for the rest of that week. I didn't erase it. Second time, it was a woman. 3 nights later, she was in the corridor near the radiology wing, an area that was strictly off limits at night. Lights kept at half because the equipment rooms needed stable temperature. She was sitting on one of the orange plastic chairs that lined the wall, her dupatta pulled up around her shoulders against the cold. She was maybe 40. She had a bindi, slightly smudged, and she was looking at the floor. I asked her if she was lost. She said she was waiting for her reports. I said the radiology desk didn't open until 7. She said she knew. She said she would wait. When I turned back, 3 minutes later with a cup of water, the chair was empty. The plastic seat wasn't even warm. I stood there for a long time. After that, I started paying a different kind of attention. I began watching for them. And once you start watching, you notice the small things. The man near the stairwell exit was wearing slippers in November, just standing and looking at the hospital entrance as if he had forgotten how to walk through it. The girl, she couldn't have been more than 17, who sat at the floor of the stairs near the ICU, knees pulled up to her chest, earphones in. Except the wire ended nowhere, just dangled around her kurta. None of them were on any register. None of them were ever there when I came back. The security desk had cameras, old ones, the kind with a slightly greenish tinge to the footage. I asked the night guard, Prakash, if I could look at the last few nights. He was half asleep, didn't really care. I sat with him and scrolled through the timestamps. The corridors were empty. Every time I had seen someone, the ward, the radiology wing, the stairwell, the camera showed nothing. Not a blur, not a flicker, just long, pale corridors and the overhead light and the faint movement of a curtain near an open window. Prakash hadn't noticed anything. I didn't tell him what I was looking for. The one who spoke to me properly was the last one. This was a Friday, 10 days after D.K. Sharma. The fog had thickened by then, the kind that turns the hospital's outer lights into vague smears of white on the glass. The ward was quiet, 3 patients sleeping, 1 awake, and watching a cricket match on his phone with the volume very low. The man was in his chair beside bed 12, which was empty. He was perhaps 50, lean, wearing a light blue shirt that looked slightly too large for him. The collar was open. He was looking at the bed. Not at me, not at the room, at the bed specifically. The way you look at something you are trying to understand. I pulled the curtain slightly behind me and stood near him. "Are you a visitor?" I asked, though I already knew visiting hours ended at 8, and this was nearly 2 in the morning. He turned slowly. He had a quiet face, not blank, not vacant, just quiet. The way very tired people look when they have stopped performing being okay. "I'm trying to find something," he said. What are you looking for?" A long pause. He looked back at the bed. Then, in the same ordinary voice someone might use to ask for directions, "My body." The air in the room didn't change. The cricket match kept playing softly from the other side of the ward. The overhead light hummed its low hum. Everything was exactly as it had been a second before, but something in me had gone very still. "What do you mean?" I said, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. "I came in on Tuesday," he said. "Chest pain. They put me here, or somewhere near here. Then everything got..." He paused, rubbing the side of his face slowly. "Mixed up. I can't find where they have put me. Nobody answers when I ask." He looked at me directly. "You are the first person who has asked me at who has looked at me in 3 days." I didn't move for a minute. Then I said, "What is your name?" "Deepak Anand." I went to the nursing station. Sister Kavita wasn't there. She had gone for a break. The night log was open on the desk. My hands weren't quite steady as I flipped back to the Tuesday's admissions. Cardiac adjacent cases. I found it quickly, because once you know what you're doing, or what you're looking for, it finds you just as fast. Deepak Anand, 52 years, admitted Tuesday 11:40 p.m. Acute myocardial infarction. Shifted to ICU Wednesday 3 a.m. Expired Wednesday 7:17 a.m. I stood at the nursing station for a long time. I didn't go back to the ward. I sat in the plastic chair behind the desk, long log open in front of me, and I thought about every face I had seen over the past 10 days. Every ordinary, quiet, waiting face. After a while, I understood what I was looking at. Not ghosts. That word had always felt too large, too dramatic, borrowed from films. These were just people who hadn't been told yet, or hadn't accepted it, or were still reaching for something they had left behind. They showed up in the last place that had made sense to them. They waited. They tried to ask. Most people couldn't see them. I didn't know why I could. Well, I still don't know. I called in sick the next 3 days. I sat in my room in Munirka and watched the ceiling fan turn and didn't tell Seema anything. She thought it was fever. She made kada and sat beside me, and I let her, because I couldn't explain what was actually wrong with me. By the 4th day, I ran out of reasons to stay home. I came back on Wednesday. The ward was the same. The smell was the same. Kavita nodded at me when I signed in, said I looked thin, asked if I had eaten. I said yes. I started my rounds. I almost didn't check the register at the nursing station on my way out that morning. It was a habit. I glanced at the next day's schedule, the expected admissions, the discharges. I had done it 1,000 times without thinking. My own name was in the column under Thursday's date. Not patient name, not visiting. My name, Rajan Verma, in the section of the log I had never once seen used during all my years at that hospital. A column that had no printed header because it didn't need one. Everyone who worked nights long enough knew what it tracked. The deaths expected within the next 24 hours. I looked at it for a long time. I looked at my name in ink that seemed perfectly ordinary, perfectly dry, perfectly real. Then I looked up at the corridors stretching ahead of me, the overhead lights making their own low hum, the fog pressing slightly against every window. Somewhere in the ward behind me, I heard a chair scrape against the floor. And I didn't turn around.